Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we're going to cover all the modern age buildings in Civilization VII. Now the content of this guide will build off of the Antiquity and Exploration Age building guides, so if you've not seen those, please check them out first using the links in the pinned comment below. Now, as we get started with the modern age warehouse buildings, we need to establish that the biggest difference between the buildings in the modern age compared to the buildings from the previous two ages is that all the buildings in the modern age are technically ageless, as this will be the final age in the game. Therefore, warehouse buildings are now only different from yield buildings in that they have zero maintenance costs, which is a sizable advantage. Furthermore, the modern age only has two warehouse buildings, with the grocer boosting food across a wide variety of rural tile improvements, while the ironworks boost production. One important thing to note here is that the ironwork actually has a solid 4 production adjacency bonus for adjacent quarters, so placement is actually quite important, especially since this bonus will likely be hard to notice at the start of the modern age, with most of your quarters being offline, due to having obsolete buildings from previous ages. Now, of these two warehouse buildings, the ironworks is the must build in all cities, as production is your most important yield. For grocer, it is a good option in cities with lots of obsolete buildings that needs overbuilding for quarter bonuses and maintenance cost reduction, especially in AI built cities that you have conquered in previous wars, as the AI have a tendency to create large urban sprawls that are super inefficient. For more efficient cities that have a smaller urban district footprint, the grocer is low on the priority list and definitely not worth starting a new urban district for. For your towns, both warehouse buildings here are overpriced relative to the warehouse buildings from the previous ages and should be skipped if you have no intention to ever turn them into cities. Now, moving on to production and science yield buildings in the modern age, we have the military academy and the factory for production, and the schoolhouse and laboratory for science. Before we jump into any of these 4 yield buildings, I want to reinforce one very important factor in the modern age, and that is everything you do in the modern age is geared towards winning the game, if you want to play the game as it was designed to. Of course, if you just want to have a blast and don't care about the construct of the game, then definitely do as you please and enjoy the game to its fullest, especially with one more turn now enabled. But if you are going through these guides hoping to gain some insight into more optimal playstyle to help you win that elusive deity victory, then please remember that in the modern age, you're no longer going for as many legacy paths as you can, but instead you should be focused on just one legacy path, as each one leads to a separate victory condition. So with that in mind, let's look at the yield building starting out with production. As we have mentioned repeatedly in all our building guides before, production is the lifeblood of your cities, and therefore the military academy should be considered a must build in all your cities. In terms of placement, just overbuilding it over an obsolete production building from the previous age in the dungeon or the armor should be your best option. Naturally, those tiles typically have your best adjacency for resource and wonders, but if resources did shift dramatically during the age transition, then maybe I would consider finding an alternative spot. But here, I would advise against starting a new urban district for the sake of just one additional adjacency bonus, because at this point, overbuilding is just more optimal given the high maintenance cost of exploration age buildings and the opportunity cost of losing an extra rural tile. Furthermore, specialists that you have ready stacked on your old production tile will transfer over, and their new adjacency bonuses will kick in once all the adjacent obsolete buildings have been overbuilt. So basically, just overbuild your military academy over your dungeon or armor, and this will keep your land unit spawn point in the same spot and give you a free promotion to any new commanders trained in the city. Moving on to the factory, we have a much more expensive production building after the recent patch changes, and it also requires quite a few technologies to unlock. Compared to the military academy, the factory provides just one more base production, but costs almost 3 times as much to construct. It also requires a railroad connection to the capital, which means you must have the rail station and a shipping key combo built first in the city, as the rail connection requires both the rail station and one form of coastal connection, with the shipping key being the cheapest option. Now, one thing you might notice here is that, like the ironworks, the factory has a 4 production per adjacent quarter bonus instead of the typical wonder adjacency bonuses for production buildings. This means usually the best pairing with the factory is not actually the military academy, as adjacent resources and wonders actually prevents you from having adjacent quarters. So the most logical pairing for the factory is actually going to be the ironwork warehouse building. In terms of being a must build, there are 2 ways to look at the factory building. One, if you are pursuing the economic victory condition, then the factory is not only a must build, but a must rush, as you're going to need it for the railroad tycoon points as early as possible. 2, even if you're not going for the economic victory path, the production and bonuses from factory resources are still good enough to make the factory a must build, even after the production cost increases. The only victory condition where the factory is more optional is the culture victory path, where you simply don't need that much production or factory resource bonuses to secure your victory. Now, moving on to the science buildings, we have 2 in the schoolyard and the laboratory. And honestly, by this point in the game, both are not going to be needed, even if you're going for a science victory path. The reason behind this is that while science was hard to acquire during the Antiquity Age and the Exploration Age, where you needed the science buildings to increase your science output, by the modern age, most of your science output is now coming from your specialists, or social policies, or even some natural yields off rural district with the proper improvements. So unless something went terribly wrong, your science output should already be easily in the 300 plus range at the start of the modern age. So adding another 11 science from the schoolhouse with the maximum adjacency is just no longer a good option. Laboratories are slightly better, with a higher base yield and additional bonus point of science on all quarters. There is also a guaranteed modern age narrative event that can boost laboratories, so all things considered, I would skip the schoolhouse and only go for the laboratory if you're pursuing a science or military victory condition, as science will be needed for both. In terms of placement, I would pair the laboratory with the military academy, as both of them will share the same adjacencies. Now, moving on to the next set of yield buildings, we have food and gold buildings. Starting with food, we have the cannery and the tenement, which both have some added effect aside from the typical base food yields and adjacency to water and wonder. For the cannery, the bonus effect is 10% growth rate, which is going to be quite strong in the modern age, even after the recent changes to the food required formula, simply because your cities will be at higher populations at this point, and a percentage bonus towards lowering the amount of food required for the next population is always going to be more effective than adding a flat amount of food per turn. So for this reason, I believe the cannery is definitely worth considering, especially if you have pre-existing urban districts that is obsolete and needs overbuilding. Tenement, on the other hand, offers 1 happiness on all your quarters, but it unfortunately also have a maintenance cost of 4 happiness and 4 gold. So while it might become a viable happiness solution in cities that are low on happiness while providing some additional sources of food for population growth, it is just not going to be your most efficient choice to handle happiness issues, and definitely not something worth starting a new urban district for. As for the gold buildings, the port is great for overbuilding the obsolete shipyard from the exploration age, so it should now complete the quarter with your fishing key. The production cost of the port has gone up after the recent patches, but since it's the only coastal building for this age, you're just going to have to build it regardless. And the added 2 resource capacity is always a great bonus to have. Unlike the port, the stocks exchange is best skip, as most of your gold income should be coming from your towns, so investing in a building for it simply is not necessary. Likewise, the modern bridge is best skip unless you need a bridge for urban district connection, or already have an exploration age bridge that needs to be overbuilt. Moving on, we have our last set of yield buildings in the culture and happiness buildings. Starting out with the museum, we have a must build for a cultural victory path and a total skip otherwise. Like with the science buildings, culture output in the later ages are no longer reliant on building. So unless you need the 3 artifact slot to facilitate a cultural victory, it is best to skip the museum completely. Likewise, the opera house here is going to be a skip because the meager culture output and influence no longer justify the investment of production or gold to build or purchase it. With so few turns in the modern age before securing victory, the culture buildings are basically the last buildings you want to consider. Happiness buildings, however, actually have increased value in the later ages because happiness costs from specialist maintenance and building maintenance are constantly rising. So, in this sense, city parks and department stores become great choices in large cities with low happiness. City parks are especially great in cities with high concentrations of vegetation, which correlates with most cities as vegetated rural tiles also provide high production, a vital factor in deciding between towns or cities in the first place. Department stores are less terrain dependent, and the bonus one resource capacity is useful everywhere. Last but not least, there is the radio station, which I would rank as my third choice amongst the three here, as it is going to be your most expensive option. It is also available much later in terms of technology unlock, and it has the weakest additional effect of providing 4 influence, as most of your influence should be gained from hub towns by now. Now, in addition to warehouse and yield buildings, the modern age has a new building type in transportation buildings. There are 3 such buildings in the aerodrome, the launch pad, and the rail station, and all of them occupy an entire tile, with some of them acting as instantaneous teleportation points for air and land units. Starting with the aerodrome, I believe it's almost a must build in the sense that it's a good source of 8 base production, and it unlocks air units in the game. You can certainly win the game without it, but it is an efficient option for overbuilding, as it can overbuild 2 obsolete buildings at once and help reduce maintenance costs. Next up, we have the launchpad, which is required for the science victory path, and because of that, you will only want to build 1 copy of it if you're pursuing the science victory. As a building, it provides a meager 8 points of science and also takes up a full quarter. Lastly, we have the rail station. Like the launchpad, the rail station is a prerequisite for a particular victory path. In this case, the rail station is required for the economic victory path. But unlike the launchpad, the rail station is a must build, even if you're pursuing other victory conditions for the following reasons. First, you can't build a factory without the rail station. Second, it has decent yield with 8 gold, and more importantly, 4 production per adjacent quarter. Third, it allows for instant movement over long distances for land units once you have your rail station network set up. Finally, it provides a nice 10% production boost towards producing units. Now, at the end of our guide here, we're going to briefly go over the 6 civilization unique quarters that are currently available in the game right now. Starting with Meiji, Japan, we have the unique quarter Zanbatsu, which consists of the Jukugoyo and the Ginkgo building. When constructed together, the unique quarter will provide additional 1 production and 1 gold adjacency bonus for each adjacent building, and increase your city resource capacity by 1. This is a solid bonus and builds off the 2 individual buildings. In terms of adjacency for these buildings, both share the Wonder adjacency, but the production-heavy Jukugoyo favors coastal tiles, while the Ginkgo has adjacency for other gold buildings. The way to harmonize this difference is to place these buildings near other quarters, as the unique quarter bonus offers much more adjacency bonuses than the coastal or the gold buildings. And one way to double up on this bonus is to have your shipping key and port serve as an adjacent quarter, as it will count both as a coastal adjacency for the Jukugoyo, a gold building adjacency from the port for the Ginkgo, and the 2 buildings provide adjacency for the unique quarter bonus for a total of 2 production, 2 gold, just from this single adjacency point. Next up for the French, we have the Avenue unique quarter, which consists of the Jardin à la Francais and the Salon. And when built together, the unique quarter will provide 2 points of happiness per quarter in this settlement. In terms of individual buildings, the pair is actually quite interesting in that the Jardin is a culture building with happiness adjacency, while the Salon is a happiness building with culture adjacency. And since we'll always be building them together, we can just sort of ignore this mix match and view them together. At the end of the day, you get a happiness culture hub with adjacencies for more culture per adjacent happiness building, and more happiness per adjacent culture building. A fun tactic with this particular unique quarter is to build them on the edges of your city, adjacent to other cities where you can create shared adjacency point with multiple avenues adjacent to each other for the maximum adjacency yield, since each avenue is made up of happiness and culture building. Now, in terms of how useful this quarter is, I think it's solid for helping to maintain happiness, and while the happiness and culture combo is good for generating social policy slots and celebrations, I think by the modern age, you should have already maxed out the global happiness and probably have back to back to back celebrations already every 10 turns. So adding more happiness and culture here is not going to help you as much as it would have in earlier ages. Next up, we have Mexico with the unique Zocalo quarter that consists of the Porta de Mercaderes and the cathedral building. When constructed together, the unique quarter bonus gives 2 culture per every tradition slotted in government. Assuming you have unlocked all the traditions from the 2 previous age and this age, this amounts to anywhere from 18 to 20 culture depending on which civs you have picked along the way. It is a decent amount per quarter, but does depend heavily on whether these traditions are still good and on waiting for the celebrations to give you enough social policy slot for all these traditions. So realistically, you're probably looking at just maybe 6 to 8 culture on average over the course of the modern age per Zucolo. In terms of the individual buildings, both buildings here are culture buildings, which I think is probably the least useful yield in the modern age. While the adjacency can boost gold and happiness, both of these buildings have happiness and gold maintenance costs that are quite high, matching the 4 required for modern age, which I think is a design mistake that should be changed to better reflect their adjacency bonuses. Or else, as it stands right now, you will probably pay more in maintenance than the gold and happiness you can generate back from the adjacencies on this unique quarter. And at that point, you're just paying a smaller happiness and gold cost to generate a lot of culture, which once again, I believe is the least useful yield in the modern age. So this is actually one of the few unique quarters that I would suggest not building at all. Moving on to America with the Industrial Park unique quarter, which consists of the rail yard and the steel mill. When built together, the unique quarter bonus gives 2 resource capacity to city, which is a nice bonus to have, but the most insane part about this unique quarter is that the 2 buildings are both production buildings. In aggregate, you get 11 base production and gold adjacency to wonder, 1 production adjacency to quarters, and 1 gold adjacency to resources. So it's just a great production hub for players who pick America in the modern age. Next up, we have Qing China, which has the Huiguan unique quarter. It contains the Shiguan and Qianzhuang buildings, and when built together, it provides a 25% boost to influence in this settlement. This is not a big bonus because most of your influence will come from hub towns, which cannot build unique buildings, as unique buildings are restricted to cities. In terms of the building themselves, the Shiguan is a science building with happiness adjacency, while the Qianzhuang is a gold building with additional gold adjacencies. Neither yield here are critical to achieving any of the victory conditions, and with the high happiness maintenance cost offsetting all your happiness adjacencies, the Huiguan unique quarter is also one that I do not recommend. Lastly, we have the Great Britain unique quarter, which is the financial center that consists of the Royal Exchange and the Manufactory. When constructed together, you get 2 gold per connected settlement to the city, which can be anywhere from 2 to over 30 depending on how well connected your empire is. This is definitely a good bonus, but it's not going to move the needle that much in the modern age when you're making over 1,000 gold per turn. In terms of the individual buildings, the Royal Exchange is your gold building with just 5 gold base yield and adjacency for quarters and wonders, while the Manufactory is the real prize here with 5 base production and additional production adjacency for resources and wonders, as well as a gold adjacency for navigable river. In summary, the financial center is an average unique quarter with a small boost to production and a sizable boost to gold, which of course can be turned into building purchases or unit purchases, which will all help advance towards your desired victory condition. And with that, our modern age building guide is complete. Hopefully this guide, along with the antiquity and exploration guides, can help you in your games, and should the content of the game get updated in new patches or DLC, I'll come back and update these guides when necessary. So until then, bye!